Welcome to Module 5 of Cells, Tissues and Regulation. In Topic 5.2b, we will learn about the interactions between hormones and their target cells. During the course of this video, you can open your workbooks to Module 5 and try and answer as many questions as you can from Topic 5.2. The learning objectives for this topic are to answer a few questions, such as what are the three factors that target cell activation depends on? What causes a change in receptor numbers? And what is meant by up and down regulation of receptors? We're also going to learn about the interaction of hormones with their targets, and what do the terms permissiveness, synergism, and antagonism mean. We will describe the forms of stimuli that can cause the synthesis and release of hormones. We'll also outline the sorts of changes that are induced by hormones, and describe how those actions are then terminated. We'll then describe how vascular tone is controlled, and try and understand the role of alpha and beta receptors in the cardiovascular system, and include the effects of beta blockers. And finally, we'll describe how bronchoconstriction and bronchodilation are controlled, and how asthma can occur. For a target cell to respond to a hormone, the cell must have specific receptor proteins on either its plasma membrane or in its interior, to which the hormone can bind. Although binding of the hormone to a receptor is the crucial first step, target cell activation equally depends on three other major factors, and they are the blood levels of a hormone, which depends on the rate of synthesis, release, and elimination through either breakdown or excretion of the hormone, the related number of receptors for that hormone or in the target cells, and finally, the affinity of binding between the hormone and the receptors. A cell can change the number of receptors it has by up or down regulation. In upregulation, the target cells form more receptors in response to the hormone when hormone levels are constantly low. Whereas if the hormone levels are constantly high, the target cell loses its receptors, and this is known as downregulation. In this slide, we'll look at the three types of hormone interactions. Permissiveness is a situation in which one hormone cannot exert its full effects on the target cell without other hormones being present. For example, thyroid hormone is necessary for hypothalamic, pituitary, and gonadal hormones to stimulate sexual development. The absence of thyroid hormone can delay reproductive development, even in the presence of the hormones mentioned just before. Synergism occurs when more than one hormone produces the same effects on the target cell, and the combined effects are amplified, meaning the combined effect is greater than the sum of the individual effects. For example, glucagon, epinephrine, and cortisol all cause the liver to release glucose into the blood by initiating gluconeogenesis. When these hormones act together, the amount of glucose released is far greater than the amount of glucose released when each of these hormones act individually. Finally, antagonism occurs when one hormone opposes the action of another hormone. For example, insulin, which lowers the blood glucose levels, is antagonized by glucagon, which raises blood glucose levels. The synthesis and release of most hormones are regulated by stimulus. Three main types of stimulus trigger endocrine glands to manufacture and release their hormones. Some endocrine glands secrete their hormones in direct response to changing blood levels of critical ions and nutrients. This is known as humoral stimuli. Humoral stimuli are the simplest endocrine controls. For example, low concentrations of calcium in the blood triggers the release of parathyroid hormone, which stabilizes the calcium levels. In few cases, nerve fibers can stimulate hormone release. The classic example of neural stimuli is the response to stress, in which the sympathetic nervous system stimulates the adrenal medulla to release norepinephrine and epinephrine, or noradrenaline and adrenaline. Finally, many endocrine glands release their hormones in response to hormones produced by other endocrine glands. For example, the hormones produced in the hypothalamus regulate the secretion of most of the anterior pituitary hormones, and many anterior pituitary hormones then in turn stimulate other endocrine organs to release their hormones. Hormones circulate in the body in two forms, free or bound. Most of the amino acid-based hormones circulate freely in the blood. Lipid-soluble hormones, such as the steroid hormones, travel in the bloodstream attached to plasma proteins. Hormones within the blood are removed by inactivation using enzymes. For example, the neurotransmitter acetylcholine is inactivated by the enzyme acetylcholinesterase. However, they can also be degraded in the liver or excreted by the kidneys. This is the reason why urine analysis can give an indication of a patient's hormonal status. A single hormone can have multiple effects on different tissue types. This is widely dependent on the receptor types on the cells in that particular tissue. The following table shows the effects of the hormone noradrenaline on different adrenergic receptors. This table can be used for reference after completing this topic, as we learn about the effects of noradrenaline and adrenaline on the various adrenergic receptors in more detail. Adrenaline and noradrenaline are hormones that can affect different receptors and different subtypes of one receptor group that is concerned with controlling peripheral blood vessel diameter, heart rate, and airway diameter. These hormones are primary ligands for adrenergic receptors throughout the body and are released by the adrenal gland into the blood. Noradrenaline is also a neurotransmitter that is released by the sympathetic nervous system, and depending on the type of receptors on the effector organ, the effect may be excitatory or inhibitory. The effect of the fight or flight response on the cardiovascular system is a good example to describe the effect of hormones on multiple receptors. When a short-term stressor activates the body via the fight or flight response, the stressful stimuli causes the hypothalamus to activate the adrenal medulla via sympathetic nerve impulses and the adrenal cortex via hormonal signals. This causes the release of hormones adrenaline and noradrenaline, which stimulates sudden changes within the body, such as increasing the heart rate and blood pressure, to allow increased blood supply to the brain, heart, and skeletal muscles. It will also stimulate bronchial dilation. Furthermore, blood is diverted temporarily from all the non-essential organs to the heart and skeletal muscles, along with raising blood glucose levels. Adrenaline is the major hormone released in the response to the fight or flight status. Noradrenaline, as a neurotransmitter released by the sympathetic nervous system, also plays a crucial role in controlling blood pressure, even at rest, by maintaining the vascular tone of blood vessels. Most small arteries have a vascular tone, which refers to the smooth muscles in their walls that maintain a state of partial constriction. This vascular tone is mostly due to the continuous release of noradrenaline in small amounts by the sympathetic nerves. When the blood pressure is too low to maintain blood flow, the sympathetic fibers fire more rapidly. This causes an increase in the release of noradrenaline, which binds to the receptors on the blood vessels and induces vasoconstriction, thereby increasing the blood pressure. On the other hand, when the blood pressure becomes too high, the sympathetic nerves fire less frequently, thereby reducing the release of noradrenaline, which in turn causes vasodilation and reduces blood pressure. Smooth muscle cells in blood vessels can have either alpha or beta receptors. Noradrenaline and adrenaline binding to alpha receptors stimulates smooth muscle contraction or vasoconstriction, thereby decreasing the blood flow. The same hormones binding to beta receptors can inhibit the contraction of smooth muscle in the blood vessels, indirectly causing smooth muscle relaxation or vasodilation. thereby increasing the blood flow and decreasing blood pressure. These receptors play a significant role in the fight or flight response by increasing the blood flow to essential organs such as the heart and brain, and decreasing blood flow to non-essential organs. The blood vessels in the heart are therefore likely to have greater number of beta receptors, whilst the rest of the non-essential tissues and organs have a greater number of alpha receptors. Other than smooth muscle in the blood vessels, adrenaline and noradrenaline can also affect a number of other tissues, depending on the receptor it binds to. For example, noradrenaline and adrenaline binding to beta-2 receptors in the bronchi causes bronchodilation. Similarly, noradrenaline binding to the beta-2 receptors in the coronary arteries of the heart and the liver causes vasodilation by relaxing the smooth muscle. On the other hand, binding of these hormones to a beta-1 receptor in the heart muscle causes an increased force of contraction and also increases heart rate. And should these chemicals bind to alpha receptors in most other blood vessels, it will induce vasoconstriction. Under stressful conditions, such as the fight or flight response, the cardiac muscle will be excited to beat faster, while the small muscles of the airways and the coronary arteries are dilated. All of this happens as adrenaline and noradrenaline bind to different adrenergic receptors simultaneously. Beta blockers are a class of drugs that bind to the adrenergic receptors and prevent the action of adrenaline and noradrenaline. Beta blockers are widely used to slow the heart rate and reduce blood pressure. Dangerous side effects can occur, however, from the unintended use of beta blockers, which can accidentally block receptors elsewhere. For example, beta blockers binding with the beta receptors in the smooth muscle of the airways can trigger the contraction of the airways, thereby leading to an asthma-like attack. In summary, from this video, we have learnt about target cell activation, the interactions of a hormone on a target cell, the control of hormone release, the fight or flight response, the response of blood vessels in synaptic stimulation, noradrenaline and adrenaline, and their effect on the alpha and beta receptors throughout the body.